Hi, everyone. Tonight, Donald Trump is publicly calling for the release of the unredacted affidavit behind the FBI search warrant to raid Mar-a-Lago. The DOJ has objected, saying that releasing the document would, quote, cause significant and irreparable damage to this ongoing criminal investigation. Now, last night on this show, I disagreed with the DOJ and called for the redacted release of the document, meaning a version with particularly sensitive information blacked out. Now, a judge has set a hearing for Thursday afternoon to decide if that affidavit, which would explain the reasoning behind the search at Mar-a-Lago, or even whether any parts of it should be made public. My question tonight is this. If the former president wants it released, then why doesn't his legal team say that in court and tell the judge that they, too, want the document released? Many major media companies, as well as a conservative watchdog group, are asking the court to release the affidavit that was apparently compelling enough for a judge to have determined there was probable cause that crimes were committed. The government objecting, saying that even a redacted version would have to be so blacked out that it would leave almost nothing of substance for the public to see. In a statement last night, former president responding, saying, quote, "In the interest of transparency, I call for the immediate release of the completely unredacted affidavit pertaining to this horrible and shocking break-in." But though Trump says he wants transparency and has never been shy to head to court to try to get his way, just a couple of hours before the former president sent that post out, his attorney appeared on Fox News with Laura Ingraham and would not quite say where they stood legally on unsealing the affidavit.
Does President Trump support or oppose the release of the affidavit?
Well, President Trump has been very straightforward in that he supports all transparency through this process, and he wants what's best for the American people, and he's going to rely on the courts to do the right thing.
So he will not then submit, or you will not submit, a motion to the court to release the affidavit in opposition to what the government said today?
We support what Judicial Watch has started. We're watching it very closely, trying to gauge what's happening, and we'll respond accordingly.
But you're not, I don't know, given the president's comments earlier, we would think that he would want it all out there so everyone can see it in the light of day. I'm still not following. What would the concern be on your part for not having it released?
No, we are supporting it. I'm not aware of any effort to oppose it. We just are following the lead of the case that's already going and watching to see what happens in response to it. But
okay, fair
he
enough.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fair. So he's not opposing its release, but he's not going to urge that it be released. Is that a correct characterization?
I would say that's a fair assessment at this point, yes.
Okay.
Good for Laura Ingraham for not just dropping the question and instead forcing some sort of answer, even if she effectively had to answer it herself. It sounds somehow like his lawyers are not as gung-ho to call for the release in court as Mr. Trump is to call for it on social media. Now, Trump's team has until 9 a.m. Thursday to file a reply to the government's court filing, so we shall see. But I wouldn't be holding your breath. In the end, while many Republicans and I have called for at least parts of that affidavit to be released, I'm not so sure the former president's team wants that. It could be ugly. Maybe not. But are they really willing to take that risk? Sure, they're saying, oh, we want to see how this plays out. We're watching, we're waiting, evaluating our options. Except it's not like them to wait. The president's team has moved with lightning speed when it comes to motions they actually do want to file in court. Remember when the FBI seized business records, emails, documents of Michael Cohen, Trump's longtime personal lawyer, investigating his business dealings and a payout to Stormy Daniels? Trump's lawyers were in court immediately to fight over certain records. So why are they waiting? If his own lawyer is saying, well, we won't oppose the release, well then why not file a motion in court to back up the president's call for the sake of transparency? Now, Trump says he wants the unredacted version out there, and obviously that's never going to happen. There are clear reasons the Trump team would want the unredacted version to find out who this apparent secret informer is, the one from within the Trump inner circle who reportedly tipped off the FBI to the existence of classified documents that the government may not have even known about inside Mar-a-Lago. An unredacted version could also completely jeopardize the DOJ investigation. So that's not an option. But a redacted version could make a lot of sense. So if Team Trump is serious about wanting the document out, then they can ask for it in court. Joining me now, a very special guest, the former United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, Richard Donoghue, who was also acting Deputy Attorney General in the Trump administration. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
All right, so before we talk about Trump's strategy here, let me just ask you from the government, from the judge's perspective, what do you expect could happen on Thursday? What do you think should happen?
I think there'll be some vigorous argument on Thursday afternoon in that courtroom down in West Palm Beach. Certainly the media outlets are going to strenuously argue that there is an extreme public interest in this and that transparency requires, and the First Amendment requires, that the public be given some access. And those will be some compelling arguments in these circumstances.
If you were the judge, would you grant it?
I think I would. You know,
Really?
certainly the judge knows a lot more about this than any of us, Dan, having read the affidavit. And, you know, it's interesting the way the government phrased their opposition was they said, well, Judge, you've read the affidavit. You know what's in it. You know how sensitive it is, and therefore you understand why it shouldn't be released. Well, that may be the case, but the rest of us have to argue this blind. And I do think there is such public interest. The judge is going to think that there is not a typical situation where the court normally just defers to the government and says, you've got an ongoing criminal investigation, we don't want to compromise that, so we're going to let it remain under seal. This is just not that situation.
And there is a presumption that this is public, right? I mean, the government has to keep going back in if they do keep it under seal and say, we got to keep it under seal. We got to keep it under seal because,
Absolutely.
right? There's a presumption that it's public.
Eventually, this will be unsealed.
Yeah.
You know, there may be things that you indicate, certain bits of information, the name of the agent, for instance, doesn't need to be unsealed. That should be redacted. There's probably other information there that should be redacted, short-term and perhaps even long-term. But eventually, the public is going to see this and judge for themselves whether this step by the department was warranted. And in my view, the sooner they're able to do that, the better.
I agree with you. Now, what do you make about Trump's strategy? I mean, it seems clear to me that the Trump legal team doesn't want to make a motion here to make this public.
I can certainly understand the legal team's reluctance. They don't know what's in that, right? And they don't know what the outcome's going to be. So as a lawyer for a typical client in this situation, I would not be eager to have that document unsealed. But again, this is not a typical client or a typical situation. So the president's called for it. Certainly his team can go in there and make a motion, just as the media outlets have.
But they won't.
We'll see. We'll see, right, Dan?
We'll see. I could be totally wrong here, and if and when I'm totally wrong, as I often do, I will come out and I will say, you know what? I got this one wrong. But I'd be surprised for the same reasons that you're laying out.
Right, exactly. But, you know, as you said, he has until 9 a.m. Thursday. We'll see what the president's team does. I do think, whether they weigh in or not, the right thing for the judge to do here, and I think the judge will find some way to release a partially redacted version of this because the interest is just too great. And frankly, the transparency interests are too great at this point with the cynicism that we see. People need to know that their Justice Department is not acting out of political motives. And they need to know that the FBI is doing its job. And to the extent that they can release an unredacted version and serve those interests and answer those questions, I think the court will be inclined to do it.
All right, we shall see. I agree with you. Let me ask you, so Donald Trump on his Truth Social put out a comment about the FBI surveillance. He said, in the raid of Mar-a-Lago, the FBI demanded that all security cameras be turned off. What is that all about? We said no. How does that typically work?
So typically, if people are not interfering with the search, they can remain. These are normally done in homes, residences, businesses, right? People have a right to be there. There are always security and safety concerns. So, you know, when you go in and do a search warrant, there might be weapons in a house or something like that. And we can't have people simply wandering around. But normally what you do is you sit them in the living room. You sit them in the kitchen. You make sure that there's an officer with them so that no one reaches into a drawer and pulls out a weapon. But, you know, that's not really a concern in this scenario. So it's strange to me that they were asked to leave if, in fact, that happened. And it's strange to me that they were asked to turn off the internal surveillance cameras, if in fact that happened.
Final question. I'm going to be doing a segment later on about a Democrat who's been indicted by the FBI today. You've worked with the FBI a lot. You've worked in a lot of Republican administrations. Do you think we can have faith in the FBI?
I think we can. And look, I've worked in the Justice Department under every president from Bill Clinton to Joe Biden, right? And I've worked thousands of cases with the FBI. And I know that the overwhelming majority, thousands and thousands of people who get up every day and go to work at the FBI do so with patriotism and integrity. So I think we can trust, absolutely.
Any thoughts about Chris Wray?
Chris Wray is a good leader. He's got a tough job right now, and he's never going to satisfy everyone. That's just not possible. So I think he'll keep steady, and he'll keep the interests of the department and the Bureau in mind, and we'll see how it all ends up, but I wish him the best.
Rich Donahue, thank you very much for
Dan,
coming
thanks
in.
for having me.
Really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.